Well, there are obvious issues with gasoline prices across the country. You don't have to go very far, and you run into folks that are frustrated with the price of gasoline. I don't know a single person that's not filling up their tank across the country and saying, this is killing my food budget, my housing budget, everything they have to be able to deal with. I asked some of my field team, just as they're out and about this week across Oklahoma, to just snap a price to the gases that are going on right now this week in Oklahoma. And you can see in Kingfisher, just for regular unleaded here, Kingfisher $3.99 in Tulsa. QT's the winner here at $3.53. We'd love to see that around Washington, D.C. or many areas of the country. If you get into Marshall, Oklahoma, $4.29. You get to El Reno, Oklahoma, $3.95. In Moore, Oklahoma, $4. And in Caney, Oklahoma, $3.99. This is just what's just happened in the last 24 hours around my state. What's interesting is people look at this and they fill up their tank and they realize it's $75 to $125 to be able to fill up their tank with gas. What that really means for them is they can't travel more, they can't get out more, they can't do more because they understand I just can't afford to be able to do that. That's the real life decisions of Americans as they process through all this. Where did this come from? Well, currently the Biden administration is saying this is all Putin's fault. We know that's just factually not true. The price of gasoline rose from the day that President Biden came into office until the beginning of the war in Ukraine, $1 a gallon. $1 during that time period. How did that happen? Was that because of oil companies? Is over in the House of Representatives, they're dragging in oil companies executives and saying you're gouging prices? Well, actually, let's look at the math on this. Day one of the Biden administration, they stepped up and canceled the Keystone Pipeline. And people keep saying, why does that matter? Well, Canada produces heavy crude, the same type of heavy crude that comes out of Russia. So we're either going to buy that heavy crude from Russia or from Canada. And day one, President Biden said, I want to buy that type of crude from Russia, not from Canada. The other factoid on this is interesting is the president's just done a release of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. The release he's doing from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve for a short period of time for the next several months is almost exactly what would be coming from the Keystone Pipeline every single day from here on out. So while he's trying to manipulate the prices with the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, you can actually increase production and input into our country from an ally like Canada that'd be reliable and predictable that actually bring prices down. What else did the President of the United States do? Day one, cancels out the Keystone Pipeline. Day one, he looks at all the Trump administration policies that do anything with energy and said, let's reevaluate all of those. Day one, he shuts down everything that's happening on federal lands as far as federal leasing, no federal leases. And he steps out and says, well, there's 9,000 that are out there. They've got plenty of options on it. He knows the math on this. Most of those are checkerboards with at least just one section tested out, but they're not going to really do production in that area until they have all the leases around it. And he knows the game on that. And so he can say there's 9,000 leases out there and really know as well that nothing's really going to happen with it. 24% of the oil that we get in the United States comes from those federal leases. So when he has now still not reopened the short-term moratorium on federal leasing, he's cutting off the future of oil into our country, and it continues to accelerate prices. We've dealt with nominees that have come across the floor in the Senate that were the selection from the Biden administration, that their whole focus was how are they going to take away access to capital for oil and gas companies. And literally this week, the Biden administration announces that they want more American companies to do more production, but then this week they release their budget after saying to American companies, why aren't you producing more oil? The Biden budget has 15 brand new tax proposals that they've got on their production of oil and gas. So at the time that they're saying to companies, y'all should produce more oil, you're the problem, they're not looking in the mirror, seeing 15 new taxes that they're releasing, trying to cut off access to capital, trying to be able to make us more focused on what's happening internationally. There are lots of issues the Biden administration needs to look at. This is not a result of Putin's war. This is a result of Biden policies. And everyone knows it. And they can try to change the subject all they want to, but everyone knows this is a direct result of the Biden policies that are here. That's our frustration. There is a way to produce more American energy. There is a way to be able to bring prices down. They're just not willing to do it at this point. There's a whole series of us that are going to have the opportunity to be able to talk through this, and I want to be able to check in with everybody. Thanks for being here. Senator Barrasso's up next. We had one thing to that as well. Then this last week, he announced 15 more taxes that he wants to be able to put on energy production. So it's been relentless in the process. Let me open this up for questions. What questions do you have? Yes, sir.
As Senator, the questioning today in the House hearing, the Democrats drilled down on these executives.
So that's funny. It's drilled down on the oil executives. That's clever. Yeah.
Retrospectively intended. They drilled down on this question of capital expenditures, the fact that these companies are not investing in production. What policies would a Republican majority or Republican administration pursue to get these companies to invest in production rather than doing dividends and buybacks?
So stability is the key aspect there. What these companies are facing is they're saying typically I'm going to increase 2 to 5% of production. How much risk can I take when the Biden administration announced this week they're going to do 15 new taxes on me, when they continue to make production more expensive, when they're limiting access to lands through federal leasing, when they're going after capital costs and saying I'm going to make getting access to capital more expensive. They just want stability. Tell me what the rules are. For instance, what's the U.S. rule right now? No one has any idea. They've just set aside the old rule, and the Biden administration saying we'll get around to getting a new rule when we get to it. They will do more production. We've already seen that. We saw that during the Trump administration when they just did stability on the rules. Said we're going to leave it alone on the rules of the road and allow them to be able to then go invest. We can produce more energy when there's some stability and there's some plan. But when they're constantly tinkering with it and they know they're doing everything they can to punish more production, then why would you do more investment on that?
Yeah, so a lot of the oil company CEOs at this hearing are saying, policy is part of it, but they're having manpower.
That's right.
There's a supply chain element, just like all aspects of this economy. And you guys kept mentioning supply and demand, right? I mean, so I think a lot of people think, analysts I speak with, prices, were high because people were back from the pandemic and driving, and supply can keep up in time. So, I mean, is there a risk you're kind of, exaggerating Biden's role?
I would only say
it's more nuanced. There's a lot of play.
The price of oil is always nuanced, and the challenge of it, what's happening at the price of the pump. We're not trying to oversell. We're just stating the facts that we've seen the last 14 months from the Biden administration. This is purposeful, deliberate policy to reduce the production of American energy. When the Biden administration sees the prices go up and he immediately goes to OPEC and to Russia and says, can you all produce more? That was a deliberate decision to say, we don't want more production here. We want more production there. What he's putting on with FERC, what they attempted to do, that actually we pulled back in the ENR committee with FERC to be able to make it harder to be able to do natural gas pipelines, harder to do natural gas exports. That's a deliberate policy piece. Now, there are other issues as well. A lot of the downhole pipe for drilling comes from Ukraine. And so that's a little tough to get downhole pipe right now when Ukraine's fighting for its life at this point. So I'm aware of that. There's also a big issue on trying to get labor. You're absolutely correct. Every business in America is trying to be able to get labor right now. So all of those are realities of production. But everybody, when they're looking to be able to invest, what they're going to do in the next level or what they're going to do on federal lands, if they're heavily invested into federal lands like it is in the West, and they're trying to figure out what they're going to do next, there's no predictability in that. And when there's no predictability, it drives it up. The flip side of this, by the way, I've already heard some folks in the Biden administration say he's announced this 180 million barrels of release, and look, the price has already gone down. Okay, number one, there is no release that's actually occurred yet. They've announced it. There's no release that's actually occurred. What is affecting the worldwide price, where we've seen some of the price drop down, is because China's in another lockdown. When China went into lockdown on March the 28th, we saw the price start to be able to drop a little bit. He announces he's going to do 180 million barrels release on March the 31st. But none of that's actually been released yet to actually get into the market. So there are a lot of things that affect the global market on it. Right now, the slight dip that's happening is because of China and their policy. The challenge is to be able to get their downhole pipe from Ukraine or maybe from other aspects of labor policy. But there's no question the Biden policies were designed to drive up the price of energy.